we were introduced by my very, very lovely friend, and approached you about doing some work with OzBox Wellness, didn't I?
Yes, yeah, that must have been about a year ago now, I think.
Yeah, I know,
Yeah.
it's been a long time. A long time. And we had a little Zoom catch up, didn't we? And it was it was just one of those things where, well, you're just one of those people that you meet and you just instantly hit it off and you get a connection. And we didn't stop chatting, did we?
I know, yeah. And it felt like we'd known each other a lot longer than just that one first chat.
Yeah, absolutely. And you just made me feel at ease and everything was easy. And yeah, it just got such a calming effect. Even when I get an email from you, I feel like, oh, everything's going to be okay. It's all right.
Oh, that's so kind.
Yeah.
Well, I remember that first chat just thinking, I don't know, we had loads to talk about, connected over lots of similar subjects and things, but the plans that you had for OzBox Wellness and just your passion and it just came from a really good place. That's what I remember. Just your passion, you exude passion.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, it's been a pleasure working with you. Anyway, so today we thought we'd just jump on here, didn't we, and have a chat about imposter syndrome. Yes. And what that kind of means to us, what it means to you, sort of what it is and things. So I will kind of hand over to you to begin with, if that's okay, to kind of like chat through what it is and sort of from your point of view of things as a sort of like a coach, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, no, I think it's a subject that I talk about a lot in coaching or just in workshops and group workshops, but it's probably one of the main things that comes up within the sessions with my clients, and I think it's something that we are quite familiar with the term now, imposter syndrome, but I know I didn't know about that until I was like mid 30s or something. I'd never heard of it. So but now I can look back in like my earlier career or even like at school and recognize that, oh, perhaps that's something that I was experiencing then, but I just didn't know it was a thing. I was thinking, oh my gosh, it's just me. And I know we've talked about that a little bit, haven't we, from your perspective as well. So I think what people maybe don't know is that it's actually been around it was first kind of that term imposter syndrome was first coined back in the 70s when two psychologists were studying high performing women in the workplace, and over time through this study, through talking to them, it was concluded that the women that they were working with were very recognized in their fields, really high performing women with accolades and expertise, but they didn't recognize their own kind of success or the role that they played in their success. And those women at the time were using these terms that we now associate with imposter syndrome, which things like, oh, I just got here because of luck, or I was in the right place at the right time. Absolutely. And that whole kind of feeling like a fraud, like that I don't belong.
Absolutely.
And I think it's interesting to kind of look back at where it came from, because I think lots of people don't realize that when we hear this term.
I thought it was a real new thing, and up until you said just now, I thought it was like what sort of research like people have done quite recently and sort of put it into that category of what it is and named it. I didn't realize it was from that long ago, if you know what I mean.
And I think that's because we hear a lot more about it now, don't we? And I think I don't know if even like the pandemic has sort of raised the sort of prevalence of imposter syndrome, where we've kind of maybe lost our confidence a little bit in some ways. So there's a lot more talk about it on social media.
I think like over lockdown we were getting in our heads a lot more, weren't we? And we were thinking about things, and maybe that sort of brought attention to some things that maybe were going on with people over that period of time, because we all slowed down a lot, didn't
we slowed down and we stopped doing things that we didn't think twice about. So things like going, I don't know, commuting or going into an office or even social engagements. We did less of that, so we kind of lost our confidence with those things a bit.
And maybe found that, you know, we didn't quite like doing those things, but it's something we did every day anyway, because that was our routine, that was what we did. We're going off on a tangent.
I know, as we always do. That, you know, that's classic with us. But I think with something that the research has shown with imposter syndrome is that over 70% of people will experience these types of thoughts and feelings at some point. So that whole, I feel like a fraud, I don't belong here, I'm not as good as they think I am. Kind of classic thought that you might be going through if you're experiencing this. But I really think it's more than 70%, because something in the work that I've done, it highlights that we don't really talk about it. So which kind of makes it worse in a way, because we're sitting there in our little silos thinking, this is just me, I'm the only one feeling like this.
Absolutely. I felt exactly the same way. Like before I knew even what it was, I read the term in a book, like, and not that long ago, like probably about a year or two ago, and I was like, whoa, like I just thought that was just me with my lack of confidence, like sort of thing that, you know, that just happens to people, and I didn't realize it was actually a thing, and that other people, and probably a lot of other people like suffer from it as well. And I think that's one of the things that I love about the group coaching work that I do, or working in groups, is that it really helps to normalize this when you've got, you know, all these incredible people who've done incredible things in their, you know, personal and professional, and they're all talking about, well, I feel like this and I have those thoughts and feelings. It's so powerful to hear other people's experiences, and it just really helps you not feel alone. No, absolutely. And I think if you can relate to another person on something, you've instantly got a connection, and you're like, I don't know, it just gives you a bit more, like, I don't know the word, like hope or security in it. Do you know what I mean? Like somebody else feels the same as me. And definitely. And I can see that a group setting could really release that kind of energy and sort of thoughts and feelings, most definitely.
It's a really powerful thing. So so can you remember, you said you read it in a book, can you remember first sort of feeling?
I can't remember. You know, I've been trying to remember what book it was I read it in, and I can't, because I've read so many books since lockdown. You know, before lockdown though, I never read any books, like, and I don't know what it was, something about lockdown.
That's
just
lovely.
I was listening to them, so it's but I didn't know what it was, and I didn't know it was a thing. I just thought it was something that that I sort of thought about myself every now and again, because I wasn't very confident in myself, and maybe I didn't even know that I wasn't confident within myself. I think these thoughts just come in subconsciously, don't they? And you don't even notice them sometimes, but actually if you really, really think about it, they are there, and you're like, you should tell them that actually. So
and I think that you sort of raised a good point there about it, it's about the awareness. When we've got awareness of this, that's the first step really to either changing it or reframing some of these thoughts and feelings, or working on our confidence. It's really becoming aware of that kind of repetitive thought process that just turns over, that, like you say, so much of that happens subconsciously, but when we become aware of it, we realize that we realize how and when it's showing up, and then we can do things to kind of reframe it or reduce its impact.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember one time, like since knowing about imposter syndrome and what it is, I've kind of thought back to past experiences and sort of remember times when there was this one time when I was sort of about a year out of uni, and I went for a job that I really, really, really wanted, and it was like my dream job. And it was a big, long interview process and everything, big build up. And I was like, I've got no chance of getting it, no chance whatsoever. And I got it. But then even after being told that you're the person that they've chosen and you're the one you've got the job, I was like, no, I don't. Did they choose me because they felt sorry for me?
Yes, because of course they would do. They're that generous that they would do that. Yeah. That sounds like, I think having the space and looking back afterwards, you can start to maybe self-coach, or kind of think about, well, what would I say to myself now if it was back then? But I have very similar experiences with jobs where you've gone for the job, you've done all the prep, you've been offered the job, and then my thought process, rather than going celebratory, like, as we would a friend, going, oh my gosh, congratulations, that's amazing, I'm going to celebrate, I really deserve this, my mind goes into well, they must have been really desperate if they picked me, or there must have been no candidates if they picked me. And now what my narrative does is go, well, I'm going to have to work even harder now to really prove that I deserve to be here. So I'm going to put in extra hours. I'm going to, just kind of put on this mask or this front that I know what I'm doing. And then that starts a whole other kind of conversation, doesn't it, with yourself about, about authenticity at work.
Absolutely, because you're basically, gosh, I was having this conversation with my mum actually the other day, like you're actually exerting so much energy from yourself into being somebody else because you feel like you should be that person at your work, when actually if you were just yourself, it would probably just be much better for everybody.
Oh my gosh, there's so much research around that authenticity at work and kind of not putting on this mask. But another people that do tend to experience these imposter-like thoughts and feelings also kind of have a tendency to perfectionism as well. And I don't know if that resonates with you, but what happens then is you're kind of working to this perfectionist level, you're trying to cover up your imposter, I shouldn't be here,
kind of like override it,
but overwork as well, so become really susceptible to like burnout and neglecting your own self-care because you're trying really hard to keep covering up the fact that I shouldn't really be here. So I don't know if that resonates in your
absolutely,
as well.
Completely. I think I do it a bit in my job now, like like all my job, like I think I do it. It sounds silly, well, maybe it sounds a bit silly, but I think I do it in my life, like being a mum, like I do it. I like overthink and overdo everything because I want my children to have such a good life. And then I question, like, if they're naughty one day, I'm like, oh, it's because something I did something wrong. Like, what am I doing? Why didn't I do this? Like, but and then also like in terms of like I work all, like I don't work, but like I have kids all day long, and then I have to do work in the evenings. But there comes to a certain point in the evening where I probably should let myself have a break, but I don't, because I'm like, I kind of got to prove myself in a way, because I feel like sometimes that I'm not working, and like I should reply to that email at 10 o'clock at night because I don't technically work in the day as much as other people, like 9 to 5. Like,
so please some argument that you work harder than
yeah.
you've got the hardest job in the world being a mum and juggling that and juggling your career as well.
Yeah, but it sounds silly, doesn't it? When you say it out loud, it sounds really silly.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point about sharing and talking about this stuff, because we can then hear it. Like, so often we get stuck in our heads, don't we, like you were saying earlier, and then that spirals out of control, whereas actually verbalizing and talking out loud, or journaling, or kind of getting your thoughts out, can help you then get a bit of distance between yourself and your thoughts. Absolutely. And something you just made me think about that's so important with I just think it's just so important. Self-care, the importance of self-care. So when you're working so hard all day, you're working then into the evening saying, I need to do this because I need to prove myself, or kind of do more. But really having a compassionate talk with yourself and say, actually, what do I really need right now? And that might just be an hour off.
It's very true. It is true. And I like, I know that from everything I've learned and everything I've learned from you and the books I've read and everything. But I think is a really powerful thing, isn't it? Your mind. And it's hard to like stop that sometimes, isn't it? It's a difficult thing, I think. Do you have any kind of tips that you would give to I know we've talked through quite a few of these, but do you have any tips that you would give to somebody that might from us talking might have thought, oh, actually, that I can relate to that, and that might be me, or somebody maybe that's been suffering with it for a while and maybe doesn't really know how to start sort of detangling it?
Definitely. So I would say the awareness around it. So once you become aware of it, just to get really curious and interested in it as well. I talk a lot about on my workshops about getting intimate with your imposter. So kind of getting to know it, because it will be one of many voices in your head. It might be the loudest, but it's not the only one. So really trying to think about, well, what is that voice saying? When does it show up? What is it scared of, actually, a lot of the time? Or what is it trying to protect me from? That can be quite an interesting thing to reflect on. And it's talked about that there are sort of maybe 3 times when your imposter voice might appear more prevalent. And so kind of trying to recognize if there's a pattern of when it shows up. So one of those times is when you're kind of being more visible, so like putting yourself out there. So that might be, I don't know, doing a presentation when you're kind of standing up and you're being really visible, or showing up on social media. Lots of people with businesses find that really hard and kind of think, oh, do I know what I'm talking about? They're going to find me out. Completely me as well. And the second time is when you're doing or starting something new. So perhaps starting a new job is one where you might start to think, oh gosh, I don't belong here. They're like going to find me out. Everything's new. And that's when we're having to kind of be a beginner again, and we're not really like to be the experts on everything. So starting something new, or when you're in the minority, you can really feel those imposter thoughts and feelings kind of get louder in those times. So I guess what I'm saying is just be aware and be curious, and try to kind of capture any kind of themes that are coming out, because the more you know about this, the more you can then prepare for the times when it's going to show up, if it's always the same time.
Absolutely.
Secondly, like we're doing, normalize it. Everybody experiences this. You are not alone. So talk to your colleagues about it. I know it's difficult, but talk, and it's a very vulnerable thing to talk about, particularly in the workplace. But if you've got somebody you know and trust, or somebody you can rely on, you just share. I remember a line manager once sharing with me how they were feeling. I mean, I always looked up to them as like, oh gosh, they're the most confident person in the world. They're never going to experience these feelings. And when they said, you know, gosh, it was about doing a presentation, and they shared with me how they were feeling, and that really made me respect them even more, actually, and it connected us. And so
that's what I was going to say. Like it brings a connection when people share things. It brings, especially with colleagues that are like maybe a bit higher up than you. Definitely,
So if anyone's listening who's in a, you know, maybe is line managing a team, or you know, is in a position of seniority, actually one of the kindest things they can do is talk to their direct reports about how they're feeling, and how maybe they have some of these thoughts and feelings as well. I really think that can help normalize. And I guess thirdly, I would say that what our imposter tells us is rarely based on fact. So it's based on fear. You know, some of these things that we've said about not being good enough, or I don't deserve to be here, is not based on any facts. So look at the evidence to discount that imposter narrative. You know, look at your past successes, look at your past feedback that you've received, look at you know, everything that you've done, and focus on the facts rather than kind of falling into this trap of believing what your imposter says.
Absolutely. I can completely relate to that. I know we were saying, weren't we, the other week, I think last week, when we were talking about anxiety, and I said to you, I have a meeting with Gemma in the morning. I was thinking the night before, I've got a meeting with Gemma, I want to be prepared for it, and I was thinking, I need to do this, need to do that. And that actually, when you take a step back and you think, where's that coming from? Do I really need to think about it like this? And then reset kind of your thinking. Actually, it was coming from a place of, I don't know, like a past, if you know what I mean, past fear, past emotion, and actually it wasn't there at all in the present.
But that's amazing, what that process that you just described that you've been through, because that's probably, you know, taken hours of practice, and lots of times where you've not recognized that, or you've just you've spent in the evening like preparing or overworking, and I think that pausing, that stepping back, it's not easy to do, and it takes time, but it is a practice, and you know, it does get easier, but it's so hard when we're always rushing around, isn't it? And
it is
so busy.
Don't they say it takes I want to say 60 or 90 days to create a new habit?
It's something like that. There's I read different, you know, sometimes it's 21 days, sometimes it's 60 days, but I think it's sometimes, I think we want to create a new habit, we also want to spend hours doing things. It's not necessarily the case. It's the consistency that is key. Little and often, like you know, like in the exercise world as well, it would be absolutely. Consistency is king.
Very, absolutely. We did have, I don't know how we're doing for time, but we did have 2 really quick questions that somebody asked me about how what they would want to ask a coach about imposter syndrome if they could.
Oh, what a good idea. Yes, I will try my best to answer them.
Okay, so do you think imposter syndrome comes from somewhere specific? Like, could it be, is it proven to be genetic, or is it inherited beliefs, or where do you find it, or where have you experienced that it comes from mostly in people?
Good question. I don't know anything about genetics. I've never heard it related to genetically sort of transferred, but beliefs are huge, and our values and beliefs have quite an impact on if you have experienced imposter thoughts and feelings. So we know that our beliefs are formed really early in life.
Yeah.
And so that environment, those people, those messages that you're receiving at an early age will definitely have an impact on, you know, your beliefs in later life. And I think when we get to when we're older, we can start to really challenge some of those beliefs that might be holding us back. Like you did, you've read about it, you're now starting to really challenge those beliefs. We can change our beliefs with that practice. But I also think they can be formed later. So when I talked about those 3 scenarios where it might show up more prevalent, those can come in later life, like, you know, when you're being visible for whatever reason, when you're starting something new. You might never have experienced it before until you know, you get your dream job, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I don't belong here. And and in the minority as well, I think those are times when it could reappear.
So the second question that I asked one of my family members, and she said, I'd like to know, do you think there's a reason that we feel we have to earn everything that we achieve, and rather than being able to just accept that things just happen, lovely things happen to us?
Oh my gosh, that's a whole nother chat in itself, isn't it? Put that on the list. I guess, you know, I'm no expert on this, but I think again that comes back to beliefs and values growing up. So what was rewarded when you were younger? How did you see those influential people around you? You know, what was their relationship like with success and achievement? Because we will learn that very early on. But society is, you know, really instills in us, doesn't it, about earning and then moving on quickly to the next thing, and we don't really allow ourselves time to just be present and acknowledge, you know, the smaller things that we've achieved as well, the everyday successes. So I think it's probably a combination of the two, and everyone will be different, and everyone's definition of success is different.
That's so true. And you've actually just sparked a memory in my head. I had a boss once that like, you do something really, really good one day, like amazing, and the next day you're back to square one again. It wasn't like celebrated, or for, you know, you for a long time it was like, oh, well done, let's move on. Like, and you said that, like, success isn't like you move on to the next thing, don't you, quite quickly. That just sparked my memory. And
I think I was just going to share just a bit more of an example. But, you know, growing up, my family, well, my dad in particular worked really hard, and was always kind of out at the office really early, and just worked so hard for us, which has instilled a really good work ethic, like, in myself and my sister. But then, you know, we didn't see him, you know, recognizing his success or patting himself on the back. And so I think, you know, we found that particularly hard growing up. So even now, you know, I'm working on that and trying to really recognize when things are going well, and kind of give yourself a thumbs up. But it's still really hard because those beliefs are, you know, they're so deeply ingrained.
Absolutely. I think a lot of people could relate to that, and a lot of people have that, and if they really dig down deep and think about where it's come from, I think that'll bring a lot up for some people. Oh, thank you so much for
so interesting chat. I could talk about this all day.
I know. And it just brings, like, we bounce off each other, don't we? I love sharing things with you and having our chats, because and this is why we wanted to share it with everybody else, because it's really great, and I think a lot of people can relate to what we've been talking about. So just to summarize really quickly, your 3 main tips for helping yourself with if you think you're sort of suffering from imposter syndrome.
So 1, just become aware of it, and either write it down or just become aware of those situations when you're feeling more like an imposter. Share with other people, all friends, family, colleagues. Normalize it. This is we all experience it. And look for the evidence. Focus on the evidence.
Oh, amazing. Thank you so much.
Oh, it's been so nice to chat to you. Thank you so much, and I hope we do this again really soon.
We will. We'll be back.